Blackberry-picking. Late August, given heavy rain and sun, for a full week the blackberries would ripen. At first just one, a glossy purple clot, among others, red, green, hard as a knot. You ate that first one, and its flesh was sweet, like thickening wine. Summer's blood was in it, leaving stains upon the tongue and lust for picking. Then red ones, inked up, and that hunger sent us out with milk cans, pea tins, jam pots, where briars scratched and wet grass bleached our boots. Round hayfields, cornfields, and potato drills, we trekked and picked until the cans were full, until the tinkling bottoms had been covered with green ones, and on top, big dark blobs burned like a plate of eyes. Our hands were peppered with thorn pricks, our palms sticky as bluebeards. We hoarded the fresh berries in our area, but when the bath was filled, we found a fur, a rat-gray fungus, glutting on our cache. The juice was stinking too. Once off the bush, the fruit fermented, the sweet flesh would turn sour. I always felt like crying. It wasn't fair that all the lovely canfuls smelled of rot. Each year I hoped they'd keep, knew they would not.
Hi, today for analysis, I'm going to start out with some background information on Seamus Heaney. He actually grew up in the Irish countryside, and a lot of his poems and other works are based off of his memories as a child. Let's start out with the main idea. It's all about the contrast between childhood, purity, innocence, and adulthood and the hardships and kind of more negative aspects that come along with adulthood. And it's just kind of all about the natural cycle of life that he faced through the metaphor of blackberry picking and the blackberries going rotten and the rotting being like the harsh realities of life. So there was a couple things I wanted to point out through this poem. Starting off first, on the first line here where it says late August given heavy rain and sun, the juxtaposition between rain and sun kind of ensues that there's going to be some conflict, which obviously there is between his youth and innocence and adulthood. Moving on these two lines where it says purple clot and hard as not, this is a couplet, a rhyming couplet, which adds to the syntax and just, it was a stylistic choice that the author made that I think is noteworthy. Down here a little bit where it talks about briars and wet grass bleached. These are a metaphor for these like hardships that start to come in during your childhood as you're getting older. And here where it talks about big dark blobs burned, this is an alliteration that also helps to enhance the syntax and is another stylistic choice that the author makes. And here where it says our hands were peppered with thorn pricks, our palms sticky as bluebirds. I did some research. Bluebird was an old French tale about a man who kept killing his wives, and so obviously his hands were sticky with blood. So this is kind of the first sign of a shift from like the happy innocent childhood into the negatives of adulthood, because obviously saying his palms were sticky with blood instead of, you know, blackberry juice or whatever, it just is a negative aspect instead of being happy, youthful, innocent, whatever. Okay, and now moving on to the second stanza. It talks about the field we found a fur. This is an example of dissonance, which is another stylistic choice that the author makes. And the next line where it says the fruit fermented, the sweet flesh would turn sour. This is about like, I think it's symbolizing like life turning sour, like instead of life being like happy and fun, whatever, it's kind of more turning sour with hardship. And I forgot to talk about this, but moving back up here, a rat gray fungus kind of infecting everything shows the passing of time as like the fruit is rotting, and this fungus is some of the hardships that people would face as adults. So like over time it just gets more and more sour as like adults grow up and become more sour, I guess. It's just imagery for the hardships of adulthood that kind of ruin your childhood innocence almost. And the last line I think is the most important of the whole poem, where it says, "Each year I hoped they'd keep, knew they would not." This is just kind of meaning that like some childhood hope will always remain, like somewhere deep inside you, your childhood innocence is still there. But at some point, you have to know that reality is going to happen, like hardships are going to happen. And in the back of your mind, you always know, like deep down, your childhood hope is wrong, as negative as that sounds. And I was just going to talk about some things overall. His tone throughout this piece is very conversational and intimate. You kind of, through his Blackberry picking, you get to see into kind of his psyche regarding growing up, aging, which is like a hard thing for anyone to deal with. And I think that's all I have. All right.